One of the things as I was preparing for this conversation, I saw is that so you had been doing informal coaching with colleagues, friends, people who
Hmm.
found you in different ways over the
Hmm.
years.
Hmm.
Obviously, because they saw something in your presence
Hmm.
and that was like, oh, I want some of that.
Hmm.
And then you had a kind of a epiphany maybe when you went to work with women who were exiting the prison system. Is that
Hmm.
correct?
Hmm.
Yeah, and that got you to formalize how you thought about all this stuff. So maybe you could talk
Hmm.
about how that experience working with women in
Hmm.
really challenging conditions led you to develop the clarity course.
We're asking the easy questions today. Um, so,
Never. It's never going
whew.
to happen.
Um, so I never intended to be a coach. Like I was a meeting planner. I did corporate events and, media stuff, for other people. But people came to me asking for help with things that they were struggling with. They had watched me, I don't know, speaking at different events or, just doing different things in life and asked me, if I would help them through something they were challenged with. And, like I had people who had a lot of money who were still challenging their own, imposter syndrome or, like how is it that, like on the books, I look more successful than you, but you live more successful than I do, and so we would start talking like that. And, people just asked me to coach them. So I was not trained, I was not planning on it or anything, but I just started talking with people and they referred people and whatnot. So I wound up, doing things like that with the women in the prison, returning from prison. They were released. And, I was volunteering with a group that worked with them. And she says, like, how do we bring people back to know themselves when everything that they've known about themselves has been stripped away for, 5 years, 10 years, whatever. And they had not made decisions for themselves. It was like, what they ate was not up to them, where they lived was not up to them, who they shared their time with really was not up to them. Like they didn't have all of the things that we take for granted, like that. And so, if I was challenged to find a way to take people through, almost like a little boot camp of, like how do you step back into, being comfortable with the family who hasn't been around you, the people who look at you and expect you to be who you were, 5, 10 years ago, and just don't understand why you can't make decisions, why those big buildings are so intimidating when you're, used to walking in a small space or any of that. I remember them saying, he's like, they asked me, what do you want for lunch? He's like, I don't know what I want for lunch. I don't even know what the options are. Just bring me food. Um, but to be in a position where you don't know what you like or what you want or, or who you are. So I started putting something together that I could kind of systematize, like what are the handful of things that people need to know to remember who they are. And so I did that. I did that for a bit before COVID, and it just was always in the back of my mind. Like, yes, we can do that with this population, but what if everybody had it?
Yeah.
Like I think often, like what kind of a world do I want to live in? I want to live in a world where people who know who they are, where they can be self-expressed without holding back, without hurting others because they're hurting, without, like all of the pretenses and fears and things that people have. Like what would the world look like if people had that profound grounding that let them just be themselves wherever they go? And so that's,
Yeah.
that's kind of where it came from. And then there's another piece of where it came from. I don't know if this is a future question, but
Let's go. Let's go right in there.
I had a friend who is now my partner who told me there is like a summer camp for women in France. And I'm like, I'm in, I want to go play. But when I looked at it, it was more of like a long spa day kind of a thing, which is great, but it's not what I think of when you go to camp. Like there's a theme, there's something that, transforms you and all of that. So she said, well, why don't you create a camp for women? And I didn't want it to just be a tour. I wanted it to be, something where we're all kind of on the same path in the same conversation, that we have that common core that we're arriving with. So I set up the camp part, but I also created the online course ahead of that so that when we all got together, we were on that same page. We did have a transformative experience. And, for me, it's really important that when you're discovering who you are newly, the next natural step is to go out and teach other people who you are. And, I can say, teach them who you are so they know how to treat you. Or, it's just another way of saying, setting your boundaries and expectations for others. Um, and when you do that, it's so important to have a community of people who will listen to you as who you're creating yourself as, or in
Yeah.
um, that vulnerable infant stage of like, this is my heart and soul, and I'm bringing it to the world. You need people who make that a safe space. And that's kind of what we created here, with the Clarity course. So there's the online community where people can, get to know each other online. But then when you get together in person, I don't know, it's unique. I don't know any other place like it. I mean, from all of the studying that I've done, different courses that I've done and whatnot, there's a bonding and transformation that's as powerful as the bonding in a trauma. Um, but it's just a different kind of a thing to be in a community of people who are like you in some ways. And from this past group that we did, very different backgrounds, ages, socioeconomic, political, like all kinds of differences. But as one woman put it, it's like we met each other's souls before we even knew if they were married and had kids. Like the chit chat came after, which is really unusual because we met each other at the level of self and soul.